The previous basket is under review.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Basket Under Review podcast. I am your host, Eamon Brennan, a buzzer at eamonbrennan.com. Also here of Basket Under Review, the best new college hoops website on the internet. Our buddy Tate Frazier from The Ringer is back again. We've got another good show lined up. We're going to talk about St. John's. We've pushed that conversation off for a few weeks, but it's time to go back. It's time to revisit. It's time to lay things out about where St. John's is in its season right now, coming off that loss to Kentucky. We're going to talk about that time Ed Cooley threw a water bottle at a kid accidentally, but he still did. And it is a metaphor in many ways for Georgetown season. Bad decision, bad process, and like the unluckiest possible outcome. That's kind of Georgetown basketball in 2025-26 right now. We'll talk about some other stuff too that's better than Georgetown, St. John's, and the Big East, namely Christian Anderson, Tobe Awaka's insane rebounding at Arizona, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But before we do that, as ever, it is incumbent upon me to tell you, go to basketunderreview.com, sign up, $10 a month. You support this show and all the live content, or all the podcast and video content we put out, and live content sometimes too. Basically every day of the week, you get access to all the written content, which is absolutely every day of the week, or at least every weekday. You get access to the Discord, Trilly Donovan's Discord, where he breaks news oftentimes earlier than just about anybody in the business, and which has a whole community of thousands of college hoops sickos in there chatting and talking and watching games together all the time. It's a great value proposition. It's been really fun so far. So thank you. Check it out. Support us. And thanks to everyone at the website for all the great work they've been doing in the first season of basketunderreview.com. Also check out our presenting sponsor, Homefield, homefieldapparel.com. We love Homefield. We're very grateful to them. Homefield dropped a bevy of incredible Indiana Rose Bowl stuff. I dipped in. I got a couple items. I didn't get the letter jacket because I'd never wear it, and if I tried to, my wife would make fun of me probably. But it's incredibly cool and clean looking. But I picked up a hat and a shirt. Indiana going to the Rose Bowl, pretty incredible. And Homefield is the go-to spot for all that stuff. Anything about your favorite college athletics program that is cool is probably found at Homefield. Homefield's also doing its Homefield House Tour. They're pounding the pavement all college basketball season. I believe their next event, let me pull it up here, is the 10th of January. They'll be at Tennessee, at Florida, in Gainesville, and then Purdue at Indiana, January 27th. And they've got a bunch of dates where they'll have, live experiences outside the arena, stuff you can buy, pregame activities, all that good stuff. So check out the Homefield House Tour, stop by, pick something up, tell them Basket Under Review podcast sent you. And thank you as ever to Homefield for sponsoring our show. Okay, Tate. We're back. Another week of college basketball in the books, and we've got a lot to get to. But first of all, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great in North Carolina with my family, celebrating Christmas right now, so it's good to be back, and I hope everybody out there that's listening to us is having a better Christmas than Micah Shrewsbury, because he said he would not be celebrating Christmas because they just lost to Purdue, and not Purdue that we know and love, but Purdue Fort Wayne. So it is not going to be a happy holidays at the Shrewsbury house, but again, I hope everybody else out there is having a happier holiday than everybody that's rooting for Notre Dame. Tough time with the playoff. Tough time with basketball right now, and maybe even a tougher time if you're the Missouri Tigers, because they actually lost to this Notre Dame team. So, we talked about the transitive fan bases now. When you lose to a team, you start rooting for them for the rest of the season. So they did not want to see that result either. But again, a lot is happening in college basketball. Had a great Saturday. I mean, across the whole sports landscape, whether it was the playoffs, whether it was NFL football, then of course college basketball was the perfect kind of capper for all things sports on that day. So it was a great time, great weekend, and I'm excited to talk about it all with you, man.
Yeah, speaking of Missouri, full disclosure, we're recording this Monday evening during the Missouri-Illinois game. So hey, if Mizzou wins this game, we weren't quite done with the podcast by then. It's we're about 16 minutes in on the clock in the first half right now. So maybe we'll keep you updated as we go along. But Mizzou needs this one badly. It's going to be an uphill battle, but they're talented enough to get it. Okay, we're going to talk about St. John's. St. John's is the primary topic on this week's show because St. John's, one of our seasonal procrastinators from last week, but a topic that, it's been a team that we talked about a lot early in the season. And I think, on One Shining Pod talked about over the last couple seasons pretty regularly, because Pitino is, beyond being a great basketball coach, and, at the top of a revitalization of a proud program that wasn't very good for a pretty long while there. he's box office. He interesting things happen around Rick Pitino, for better and for worse, throughout his career. And he has had their roster build and his approach to it in the summer, and the point guard position specifically has been a topic since the roster came together. And for the first time after the loss against Kentucky, yet another sort of marquee non-conference loss on a resume now that really doesn't include any good wins, with the possible exception of Baylor. And, Baylor is going to be a potential tournament team or thereabouts. St. John's has really not come anywhere close to living up to its preseason expectations. Now, my preseason expectations were a little bit more, as we talked about back then, a little bit more reserved, right? I was a little on the roster build and some of the noises Pitino was making, even sort of close into the start of the season. And he's talking about ticket sales and talking about Bryce Hopkins being good and solid, but he wanted him to be sort of like, I can't remember the exact quote, but above and beyond, basically.
There were a lot of quotes. That's what Rick Pitino was talking a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure, as he is wont to do. But it wasn't until after this Kentucky game, a loss to a Kentucky team that we absolutely hammered on this podcast a couple weeks ago, and rightfully so, because they weren't playing hard, and they're playing hard now, and we'll get to them eventually. But finally, Pitino came out and said, yes, we do need an actual point guard. We tried to get one. We didn't get one. And that's why we're struggling in certain aspects of our offensive game right now. And that is very funny, considering we are just a few months removed from him basically declaring the entire concept of the position dead.
Yeah, it moved quickly. And Ian Jackson was at one point their number one target. That's at least what he was saying. And now he's saying after this game, right, that they had 4 different guards that they, swung and missed on. And because of that, he treated it like an injury, right? He's like, this is a team that has to change their identity because we don't have the point guard that we wanted. Again, this is a roster construction issue. And he even asked the reporter who asked him the question, like, what do you want me to say? Do you want me to damn these kids? Do you want me to say that we have no shot, or do you want me to try to be positive about the situation? So he completely tried to flip the tables as best he could, as Rick Pitino is, quite able to do. He even did the Pitino game. He said, is Tiny Archibald going to walk through that door? And he's not even. He is not going to walk through that door, as we both know. So it is fascinating. He mentioned in passing Ian Jackson not boxing out also in that post-game press conference. And if you look at the stats in this game, and if you watch this game, Ian Jackson, 2 assists. Ruben Prey had more assists than Ian Jackson. That is not a recipe for success when you talk about being the point guard, a guy who's going to help the rest of this team sort of figure out what they're going to do offensively. Even though the offense, for the most part, at least early in the season, you and I were talking, not as bad as maybe we expected them to be. It really wasn't the offense that was the problem. It was specifically defensively, which was the issue. Now it seems like offensive rebounding is one of their biggest issues. And again, last year they were a top 12 offensive rebounding team. This year, not even close to that range. So it just feels like the identity is a little bit lost. Rick Pitino seems very lost. And, if you're doing the scale of what is this team right now, Rick Pitino graded them as decent. So we go very bad, bad, decent, good, great, so they're just a mid-tier team. And it's not good when you don't have the opportunities ahead in the Big East as well, when you really have UConn as the only team hanging the banner for that conference at this point. So there's not a lot of opportunities ahead for this team. And I don't know about you, but after this game, when I saw Rick Pitino, it just seemed like, to see who he was in the summer and to see who he is now, the tune has changed so much, and it has changed so drastically. And again, they still need a point guard, and they need that identity. And I don't really know if they have an answer, because he said Darling was supposed to be the backup. He thought Sellers would be the point guard at some point. Obviously, Ian Jackson has not worked out, so I don't know where they go from here. Maybe Dylan Mitchell is like some sort of point forward, primary point forward. I don't even know what the answer would be. But again, it seems like Rick Pitino does not have any answers, and he is very, very frustrated. He said on to Harvard, but again, he called them a decent team, and that is not a top 5 team as they were predicted to be by the powers that be going into the season. So we're far from what we expected at this point.
Yeah. So just to revisit the comments from the summer. So he recruits Ian Jackson. He comes out and says Ian Jackson's going to be the point guard. Mm-hmm. This raised eyebrows because Ian Jackson has never once in his well scouted and evaluated prep career been anybody's idea of a point guard, right? And as a freshman at North Carolina, albeit playing with Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis, so there's, your opportunities to play make are going to be pretty limited. The ball's not going to be in your hands a ton, but he had a 7% assist rate. And that's just super low. That is catch and shoot wing level assist rate. And so nobody's idea of a point guard going into St. John's, but Pitino is Pitino, and maybe he sees something and you give him the benefit of the doubt. And then whatever it is, you know, a month or two later, a couple weeks later, it's August, early August, he does a media availability, I think maybe at Madison Square Garden or somewhere in New York. The New York reporters are there and they're asking him about point guard. And he's like, there are no point guards anymore. And this is, this is a verbatim quote. There are no point guards anymore. If you find it, you're probably describing a guy who can't shoot. Now, this was an even more eyebrow raising, obviously, right? Because you've seen Ian Jackson now in practice in the summer for a month or two or whatever the timeline was. And you're already saying, actually, never mind. Point guards are dumb. I don't care. Point guards are silly anyway. We don't really need one. And in isolation, you can understand what he's saying, right? Like, I don't agree. There are plenty of point guards. They do different things than like when Mark Jackson and Avery Johnson were point guards or whatever. In the 90s, that's it. The players are different now. But there are lots of teams at the NBA level. There are lots of teams at the college level doing interesting things with guys who have the ball in their hands, who can play make, who you would not see as traditional classical point guards. Positionless basketball has been a thing for a long time now. And if you have guys who can dribble and pass, it kind of doesn't matter if they're super tall. I mean, Wembanyama will block a shot and grab the ball and he's leading the fast break. Like, is he a point guard? No, obviously, but he does point guard stuff sometimes. And he's only the most extreme example because he's like 7'4" or whatever. So the concept is not crazy in isolation, but you have to have the skills. It's not so much about the players on the court. It's about how the skills mesh and intertwine and overlap. And this team didn't seem to have those skills at other positions. We're talking about Bryce Hopkins as a possible guy, or, maybe Dylan Mitchell can run the ball up the floor a little bit. Guard, like Darling is kind of a more traditional point guard, but he is supposed to give you decent minutes off the bench. And we kind of suspected early on in the season, like he's probably going to end up being the guy by default at this role. But then you give up a lot of size and perimeter defensive sort of length and disruptiveness. And so the more you dug into their roster, even in the offseason, the more you kind of came away with the impression that he clearly wanted to preserve a lot of what made last year's team good, particularly defensively. Length, being able to switch, guard multiple positions, size at most positions, like that was still foremost. But he also clearly was traumatized by losing that tournament game to Arkansas when they couldn't shoot. And they couldn't shoot all year, and they just figured it out and hit 15, 10-foot jumpers and guarded people to death throughout the Big East
and made them
campaign.
pay for switching, right? I mean, that was the big thing, right? The switchability came back to bite them in that game,
right? But they don't have that level of playmaking even at their wing positions this year. They don't have Kadari Richmond this year. And so then you're in a situation where everything filters through Zuby in the post, and they're taking a ton of shots. I was looking at their shot distribution, percentage of shots by region on CBB Analytics. By far, their most common shot, 36% or thereabouts, is at the rim. 18.8% in the paint, and then you go out from there, and they're shooting like 8.7% from mid range, which normally you think is probably good, right? That's like analytically optimized or whatever, but they don't shoot well from there either. And they don't shoot well from three, and they don't take a lot of threes. And so everything is just crunched in. So you play a team like Kentucky, which again, a few weeks ago, we were hammering them for not guarding or playing hard, but it's not difficult when you know what's coming essentially on the offensive end, and there's not nearly as much gravity or threat anywhere else on the floor. And so they haven't been a terrible shooting team. They're not as bad as they were last year. They're a bit better, but they've taken a hit on the defensive end for pretty much the entire year. They're not as ferocious as they were. They're just pretty decent so far. And they are not able to maximize what they do have on the offensive end because they lack playmaking and they lack shooting gravity. And so the offense just kind of gets muddled down, and it's a lot of one-on-one. Can we score in transition? Can we get out in front of you and create disadvantages? And it's just not working. And so
not at all.
Go ahead.
No, I'm right there with you. It's just not working. I mean, that's it's simple when you watch this team. And, Patino was trying to spin it in the right way, just talking about they're getting to the free throw line, right? 32 free throws in this game, which is an encouraging sign because they're getting to the line. But there's really just no answer when, last year was like late in the shot clock. Kadari Richmond could get you that mid-range jumper. RJ Lewis could get you, a little, floater or, mid-range shot, whatever it may be. But this year they just have nobody that seemingly knows that that's their role to do that. And I guess it would be Hopkins would be the right answer for that role, but he's not been that guy either. So I did feel like them being top 5 was a little egregious, and you called it. You were on the right side of history there. But I am shocked as I watch them to see how the lack of identity that they have at the offensive end. And again, it just comes back to like roster construction, and even Rick Pitino kind of admitting that after the game was pretty damning overall. And again, he didn't want to, go too deep into the well of like blaming, the players on the team, but it sort of is what it is right at this point. I mean, that's just who they are with this group.
Yeah. And it is funny too. I take Rick Pitino at face value most of the time because I do think he is one of those guys that for the most part, he has such a status in the game that he kind of can say what he wants to say. Mm-hmm. And he says stuff and you're kind of like, well, he doesn't really have a reason to BS. Like he's not preserving his reputation at this point. He kind of is an open book. And generally, whether it's in a press conference at, something like the Final Four or standing outside a locker room at the game with 2 or 3 reporters, he just kind of says what he's going to say. And you don't tend to have to think, oh, is this a message for the team or is this blah, blah, blah. He'll just if he's frustrated with his team, he'll just say that they all suck. And then he'll try to,
they have no lateral quickness. Right.
Right. Exactly. Like he'll just destroy them and then maybe feel a little bit bad about it or whatever, maybe not. But I generally think that he is pretty straight up. So I thought the point guard thing in the summer could be read in that way of just like, hey, like there's more than one way to skin a cat essentially. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try it this way. And we're going to have size. We'll have more shooting and we'll still be, at least I thought they'll still be as good roughly as they were defensively a year ago. And it'll be ironing out the offensive wrinkles. That would be the issue. But this comment after this game essentially like drops the kayfabe and sort of in a way like is kind of self-exonerating of being like, no, I knew we needed a point guard all along. I'm not dumb. Like I know point guards are important. We just didn't get one. And so I had to kind of like try to build up the guys that we do have. Right. It's not, so it's funny. It's like this, it's not like this was some big tactical blunder on my part. Let's make sure that's on the record. Like I obviously know about basketball. So it's just kind of funny to see the change in tone, obviously, as we said earlier. And look, I mean, I think, I wrote about this on my newsletter briefly, and was just kind of like, cause this is one of the things that in my approach to the way I cover the sport and have kind of always covered recruiting is like, just tell me when the kids are on campus and then I'll look at the roster and see, try to figure it out from there. Right. When it's time to preview, I'm not going to check everybody's Instagram pages to see which edits they're posting from which visits they went on or, I'm just tell me when the kids have committed and then I'll assess the roster when it gets put together in like June or July or whatever. Right. And so I would genuinely ask, like, what players did UConn miss out on? I'm not even, they have a pretty significant NIL budget. What happened? And, a UConn fan, or not UConn, pardon me, St. John's fan responded that, Silas Damari from UConn, originally from Georgia, before he transferred, took a visit and then committed to UConn. Xavier Lee from Florida, which would be an interesting situation if he had.
That feels like an Ian Jackson redux, right? Yeah,
potentially. I mean, he's not exactly lit it up, although he's been playing better lately. To be fair, and he's a better player than he played like early in the year, particularly from beyond the arc. But he'd
still
give
a
them
score first guard though. I mean, like it just feels like they needed like a table setter point guard, which is so funny because it's contradictory to what he said in the offseason.
He would at least give them a perimeter guy who can advance the ball and get past the defender and create some off man situations, even in the half
Mm-hmm.
court, right? Or, play really fast off of screens and swing the ball to the corner. Like he's not the world's, he's not the world's greatest assister of all time, but he would have given them something a little different. But, that like you look at all the guards that went through the portal this year, and Malachi Smith, Rob Wright, Elliot Cadeau, Bruce Thornton, who did not go into the portal, but some St. John's fans think, they tried to kind of, nudge him into Melvin Council, who that would be funny. I think he would, as much as he might irritate and also occasionally like blow me away, I'm sure he would make Rick Pitino lose his absolute mind. I mean, there were guards out there, and I'm sure they were talking to a lot of them. It's just interesting that they missed on everyone and then settled on this idea of like, we're just going to have to figure this out. Because it's a roster in this era with Pitino and the NIL they've been spending that you think even after all of those options fall through, there are other avenues you can get to. And it's just interesting to see them get to this stage of the season. A little bit like, or that stage of the building process, a little bit like the season before, when they have the core of something you can kind of see working. And obviously last year's team worked because it was so good defensively, but they're lacking sort of key elements to be a really like super duper elite national title team.
Yeah, especially when last year you saw them, win the Big East tournament. You saw kind of it kind of came to fruition for the most part. It was like, okay, this is the prince that was promised. This is the Rick Pitino era. It's been ushered in. Now we have a real, back and forth at the top of the conference between, obviously Hurley going up against Pitino. This is great for the league. This is, great for these two programs. It's great to have St. John's back into the mix in a national capacity and to have them in the top 5. It was like on paper, this all kind of passed the smell test for the most part until you really got down to the actual basketball. And the schedule doesn't help either because a lot of the fact finding, I mean, it was more of a smacking in the face. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't really test some things out because immediately you have Alabama coming in and, running this ridiculously rampant offense where you have a million possessions and rebounds are at a premium and you're trying to keep up and play with them. And it's like every single time they're trying to figure out who they are, the games just keep slipping by and the opportunities keep slipping by. And again, Zuby is still an undersized big, right? So when they go up against the size and the length of Kentucky, and you mentioned their shot diet, you're going into the lane against guys who are longer and bigger than you, and you're feeling that in real time, and then you have no other answer, right? I mean, that's sort of the real issue with this team. It's like they have no left-hand jab or any other, exercise to sort of get into the mix without playing and being who they are. And again, they still are undersized at most of those positions for the most part, even though Zuby's a great player and we enjoy watching Zuby play. He's still 6'9", on a good day 6'10" if he wears the right Adidas sneakers or Nike sneakers, whatever it is. So they just, for me, I'm just so concerned about, what does this team do internally? Is there fortitude as a group? Because there's so many individuals on this team that have had their own individual journeys where it could really dissipate quickly. I feel like last year's team felt a lot more connected as a group, and this year's team feels more of an isolated incident. And even in this game in the second half, as they showed Pitino, they showed the bench, it just seemed like dejection was the sort of look across the board. And Rick, after the game, sort of, basically said that. And again, for him to say there were 4 guards that they went after that would be the right point guard for this team, now you leave it up to you, me, the rest of the media landscape, and, even the commenters, like you said, like coming in and being like, well, they were going after this guard, they were going after that guard. So that makes even more, sort of mistrust within the building because everyone's like, oh, I wasn't the number 1 guy on the board. That's what I was told. That's what, my agent told me when they were talking to Rick Pitino and they were talking to the rest of the St. John staff. So again, it could go sideways quickly. I do trust Rick Pitino more than most to be able to galvanize a group in some sort of capacity. And maybe there's a world in which they just up the ante defensively and they're able to get that identity back and really, string together some wins. They have a real opportunity in the Big East because there aren't many teams that are better than them in the Big East. But it really comes down to that backcourt. And if Ian Jackson, Sannon, Darling, right? I mean, if these guys can't figure out a way to actually make an imprint on a game and finish a game, we haven't seen them play 2 complete halves back to back. Like we've seen, they had a good first half, right? Until the 16-minute mark of the second half, it was like St. John's is in control of this game. And then all of a sudden it completely slips out from the wayside, and Kentucky was able to get back and dominate for the rest of the game. Oweh had a great game. It was like Sannon came down and gets ripped by Oweh. Oweh goes down and gets an and one, and it was like the whole game flipped. And I just feel like they have no answer when they get, hit with any sort of, controversy. And I think it's just not very fitting of a Rick Pitino team. And you can see his frustration, and it's very unsettling if you're a St. John's fan, because you had such expectations. And obviously when you have expectations, when you get hit with, the jaws of reality, you're sitting here and you're saying, what happened? We were supposed to be a top 5 team. Now we're not ranked, and now we don't have many opportunities in front of us.
Yeah. And they're done basically in the non-conference. They've got Harvard at home, and then they start Big East play. And you're right. We're talking about this in sort of, quasi disastrous terms, but it's really relative to expectations. They're still probably the second or third best team in the Big East, depending on where people rate Seton Hall. And it would not surprise anyone by the end of the year if St. John's has a nice year in the Big East. You look at their schedule, and they're kind of likely favored to win most of their games for the next month, basically. I guess when they go to Villanova January 17th, that'll be a game they're probably favored to lose or close, sort of a 50-50 pregame outcome type of thing. But, it's just relative to top 5. A lot of people, not a lot of people, some people had them number 1 coming into the year,
right?
The clear favorite in the Big East. That was all of the talk and momentum in the summer. And it was really not until I dug into like UConn's roster doing my Big East preview being like, and I thought I was doing a kind of quasi hot take at the time of being like, UConn's clear, I think the favorite in the Big East here. Like this looks like the better team to me. And then I published that, and like with, as it was happening, previews were coming out, and a lot of other people had UConn in the same category. So it wasn't really a hot take, but it looks obvious in hindsight. You just have to go back to the summer and remember, like, this was considered a national title contender, and they are now in a position where they have essentially done very minimal stuff well in the non-conference, with the exception of, honestly, the Iowa State game might be their best performance. I think probably is, without a doubt, their best performance of the season. They obviously lost that game, but that's a bucket either way. And then they have a super marquee non-conference win, and maybe we're talking about it a little bit differently if things go a little different. In
most
that game.
complete game that they played, though. I mean, that's 100%. Really what it comes down to. I mean, it's kind of like a tale of 2 halves every time you watch this team. You don't know which half is going to be, but they never string it all together. Yeah,
and they were great offensively in that game against a really good defensive team, and that was a demonstration too of like the physicality and size and some of the skill of the bigger guys like Hopkins, and like there are things you can use in this group of players. There's a reason people had high expectations of them. It's just not produced the non-conference that is going to lead to them, especially in this year of the Big East, which we'll discuss, to being a high single-digit seed in the way that you want to be, obviously, heading into the tournament. Okay, well, for as bad as Rick Pitino's weekend was, there was another coach who had an even worse weekend. His name is Ed Cooley.
Oh, man.
And
they play each other very soon, by the way. That's going to be a loser-leaves town matchup. Yeah.
They do on New Year's Eve in D.C. Don't think I'll be attending that one, but they're halfway tempted to get a press pass and go. It's my wife might get mad at me if I do that, but I'm thinking about it now live, like as I'm doing the podcast, being like, maybe I could sneak over there. But yes, not to bury the lead. Ed Cooley threw a water bottle in the crowd,
and has been suspended for it.
He has been suspended. Yeah. He's been suspended for 1 game for Georgetown's next game, which is against St. John's. So actually Ed Cooley won't even be on the sidelines for that game. Which either makes it more interesting or less. I can't really tell, but here's my I've thought about this, and this is what I think about this entire situation. Besides the obvious take of like, hey man, don't throw water bottles into the crowd. Not a great idea. This feels like Georgetown season in a nutshell to me. Not the best process, has not been well executed, but has also been just super unlucky. And it's combined to produce the currently like 104th ranked team at Ken Pom. They're way worse off than that in the net, I believe. And it's just like everything is already kind of bad at a low level, and there's no scoring, and the team isn't functioning the way you kind of hoped it would. And the way some early season returns kind of made us think it would when they beat Clemson at home. And you compound that with, losing Iwuchukwu to a medical procedure that kind of hollowed out their interior defense in a way that they just really couldn't afford because that was going to be the identity of the team. That's the water bottle throw to me. It's just like, if that had landed on some stairs or against a railing or even in the face of a grown adult man, it would still have been bad and he should have been suspended for it. But it would not have been so bad that, because like, you hit a little kid, man. You can't be throwing stuff, number one, but also that was a blind throw. He obviously wasn't trying to hit the kid, but it's just like, of course it hit a kid in the face. Of course. Of all the things that are going wrong with Georgetown with basketball, the coach can't even make a horrible decision. It'd be like if Bob Knight hit a kid with the chair. You're just like, this was already stupid, but now it looks 10,000 times worse. This poor little child sitting in the third row, getting absolutely hit with an empty Dasani.
At least it was empty. I think that was the one upside, is that at least it was empty. At least he drank the water. At least he was hydrated when he made the throw. It felt like a scene out of The Campaign with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, where it's like, did he just hit that baby with a water bottle? It's like, yes, he did. He just hit that baby in the face. He had apologized to the family, which was also just like, reading an AD have to write a statement being like, I'm disappointed in our coach for hitting this child with the water bottle. And then Cooley having to double down twice with the apology. It just felt like so out of this world and so insane, which is just so college basketball at some level. So, I mean, when you saw it in real time, like when I first saw it, I was like, did he just hit someone in the face? And then they do the slow-mo cutaway, and it's like, yes, he just hit a child with the water bottle. And yes, obviously emotions are high. Ed Cooley has high expectations. Like you said, the season started on a little bit of a bright spot where it felt like, okay, Georgetown, they're going to be in the mix this year. But this is a coach that went and took this job because of how much he loved Big John and about, kind of bringing back the Georgetown basketball model. And it just really hasn't worked. It's trending in the right direction. It obviously was sort of in this really dark gully that needed to get pulled out of. So he's trending in the right direction for the most part. But things like this are hard to come back from. And it's also things that you remember, so that's really tough for Cooley. I think the one bright spot is he will be back for St. John's. I did see that. I looked at he's going to miss Coppin State. So he will be back for St. John's, which is...
I was just reading this to confirm that, and I was like, okay, they're playing Coppin State. I don't have that on my list here, but
that is good. So at least he'll be back for that game, and there's a chance he can get some sort of redemption against a Rick Pitino team. But yeah, I mean, there's really no way to explain, when you're talking safety and security of spectators, when that is a sentence that is being written up from the powers that be within your program, it's just not a good place to be. And Ed Cooley already has, some question, Providence fans will tell you all about the Ed Cooley drama and all that sort of stuff. So he's already got bad juju kind of coming this way. You don't need any more like bad guy things kind of surrounding you. So for you to throw a water bottle and hit a child, it's just it's a tough spot to be. And again, there's really nothing you can say even to make yourself look better in that situation, because again, you still threw a temper tantrum and hit a child. That's not a good look for anybody.
No, I mean, I would say I spend, I don't know what percentage, the vast majority of my time around my own children, trying to make sure that I don't thoughtlessly chuck something over on the wall and I just don't see much, you know what I mean? Like I throw my backpack over in the corner and my toddler is standing there or something. I'm hyper aware about it. So it was extra bad. And frankly, rhetorically, I think Ed is probably a little lucky that every news story written about this is just referring to a child, because you could very easily call that a baby.
Yes.
Like
that was a
that
baby.
is like a toddler. That is in our household, you are considered a baby until you're
Mhm.
like, whatever, older than this child is. And
That kid will be in a car seat for the next 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Depending on the anxiety level of the parents, maybe even longer than that.
Right.
Yes. So not great. And that's an understatement. And the basketball itself, I mean, you can understand why he was so frustrated and lost himself so thoroughly in that moment. Is like they took a home loss to a Xavier team that they should, in theory, be beating, and they are now like out of the tournament probably. With
Lost 4 of their last 7. Yeah.
Barring a total turnaround. They had the great win over Clemson early in the year. We thought Maryland was going to be better than they are when they beat them. Maryland is clearly not very good, and so that win doesn't really stack up to much in the grand scheme of things. But a true road win in a local rivalry early in the year, positive momentum, right? The Clemson win, solid, and will hold up, I think. But they lost the game to Dayton during Feast Week. That was bad. Just, could have won, and
Yeah, could have gone
bad in the
way.
sense of like
Yep.
the result really hurts because it was right there. And then that gives you an opportunity to play BYU the next day. And they didn't get that opportunity. They played Miami instead, who's rounding into looking like a pretty solid team. And Miami beat them, by double digits. They lose at North Carolina by 20. They lose this game against, and barely survived against St. Peter's on December 13th, by the way. And they're very lucky that they did, because they'd really be out of the NCAA tournament if they'd lost that game. Beat Marquette on the road. Marquette's really, really, really bad. And Xavier is a team you should be beating at home, and you should probably be beating at home by double digits if you're a tournament team. And they're, like Xavier's going to knock off some teams in Big East play this year. Fine. But they're not, nice win over Cincinnati, but they're in a rebuilding mode for sure. Patino, whatever,
and that goes back to expectations, right? I mean, like Xavier has no expectations, so every time like they beat Cincinnati, it's like, oh man, this feels great. They beat Georgetown, it's like, oh, what a surprise, you know what I mean? Right. So like, even though they're not a good team, it's like the temperature is totally different. Like Cooley has expectations this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's in year 3 now, and the first year they finished 192nd in KenPom, and even then at the time, because of the climate that we're in, and because of how quickly you can overhaul a roster, I was sort of like, I didn't expect them to make the tournament. I didn't expect them to be this bad. That's like first year of a rebuild 10 years ago level bad, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe Georgetown is not like among the top spenders in terms of roster in the country, but neither was Providence ever, and Providence under him, the reason he was hired at Georgetown is because he provably every year put together teams that were either getting into the NCAA tournament or pretty darn close, with very few exceptions. And that's all Georgetown really wanted. And you think, if you're a Georgetown fan, and the rationale for the hire is, okay, he was able to do that at Providence. If we put some more resources behind this guy, obviously we're going to pay him a bunch more money. And we are the Georgetown Hoyas. We have a huge brand. We're in the DC area, which is probably easier to recruit to in theory, and a university in theory that's easier to recruit to than Providence. No offense to any Providence fans out there, but that is the rationale that Georgetown fans would be thinking, right? And so even last year, it's like, okay, there's progress. But again, you're like year 2, didn't get particularly close to the tournament, 90th in KenPom. Okay, now's the year you really got to go. And you could almost feel him in that moment being like, shit, this isn't happening, is it? Like, this isn't actually going to, like, we are still not going to make the tournament. Like, this is just where we are. And the pressure is going to begin to mount. And he's a very proud guy, and he had a tremendous tenure at Providence, and he arrived at Georgetown with a ton of fanfare, and he talked his talk, and all power to him, but you got to back it up. And if I'm a Georgetown fan, I'm sitting there looking at the program right now and being like, we broke a taboo in the Big East to go get this guy, right? Like, that other fans were not happy about, certainly Providence fans, but other Big East, it's a conference with a culture of like,
it's like dating your friend's ex-wife. Yeah.
There's a whole, like,
it's a bad look.
It was a taboo. I think in a lot of other leagues, it's like the SEC, like SEC football, it's like Lane Kiffin goes to LSU and people are mad about it, but no one's surprised. Like, it's not a big deal. The Big East, people are, it ruffled feathers. And if you're going to do that, you got to make it happen when you get to your new spot. And they have been, for as much as Providence fans are annoyed with Kim English, and as much as Providence has also not made the tournament since he left, pretty much every year Providence has been better than Georgetown. And that is not at all what Georgetown thought it was getting when it made this investment. And you watch college basketball long enough and you talk to coaches long enough and you can see them on the sidelines when they start to lose the run of themselves and they start to feel the pressure. It's just obvious. And that moment the other day, throwing a water bottle into the crowd and being unfortunate enough for it to hit a very small child / baby in the face is a moment where you see the cracks of not just this season and the frustration around it, but the entire tenure and what's actually on the line here, which is the confidence of a university and its proud and anguished and angry fans of like things being not redeemable after a certain point, and it's getting there.
Yeah. I mean, if you told the Georgetown powers that be that, hey, we're going to be in year 3, he's going to be 35 and 43 and just hit a baby with a bottle, they'd be like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is happening? This is not what they would have expected in any world, and nor would you or I talking about this situation. So I'm not saying it's untenable. I'm not saying that it's, it's dire and there's no way back. But again, this is very far off the rails for what Georgetown expected. And again, when you do something out of turn like they did, maybe it's a little bit of bad karma that's coming back to bite them. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's just not exactly going as expected. And, it's troubling because I think everybody in college basketball that covers the sport wants Georgetown to be relevant. So like we all at some level, and it's not that we're rooting for Georgetown or we pick favorites or whatever. It's just when you have a storied program, you want a storied program to be back in the mix. It's why I want DePaul to one day matter. You know what I mean? Like I want Chris Holtman to succeed at DePaul at some level. So it's sort of one of those things too, where it's a tough spot to be in because everybody wants it to work at some level, but it's not working right now. And this is a perfect example. And again, it's an example that I couldn't even have dreamed up if you gave me a multiple choice, like these 4 things are going to happen this weekend in college basketball. And one of them was baby hit by bottle. I'd be like, okay, that's erroneous. There's no way that's possible. But again, it is in the world of college basketball.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, man, you can just see coaches start to act the way when they can't control themselves anymore. I think back to like when Tom Crean got really mad at the Michigan assistant Jeff Meyer in the handshake line after that game.
Juwan Howard, right?
Juwan Howard.
Right.
I even think back to like Brad Stevens, who was like the coolest cucumber on the planet, right? That was his whole thing of like, dial up an incredible play. We make a 3 to win the game, calmly walk, to the other bench, shake hands, and off we go. And by the, his last couple years at Butler, and the teams were still good, but his last couple years at Butler, you'd see him like diving on the floor and like clenching his fists, screaming to the sky. And you're just like, all right, this guy might need a break. You know what I mean? Like this guy might need to do like a year breather. And we obviously saw what he ended up choosing to do with his career as he went to the NBA, where things, the logistics of the schedule are more intense, but the day-to-day is probably a little bit more like relaxed, and you lose a game, you move on to the next one, and there's 82 games in a season, and you can chill. And then obviously eventually he went to the front office where, like you can just be a big brain in a jar and you don't have to live the day-to-day anguish of being on the sidelines. And yeah, you can just see it and you can tell when it's happening. And it seems to be happening at Georgetown. And again, a lot of season left in a Big East where there are plenty of winnable games. Whether there are plenty of winnable games for this Georgetown team, which is not defending anymore in a meaningful way. They beat Coppin State as we're recording. They finished that game. They won by 30, 97-67. But they're just kind of average, other than not turning the ball over very much. They can't shoot. They don't shoot threes, and they don't make them when they do. And the offense is just kind of a muddle. And yeah, it's just a mess at this point. And we'll see if they can turn it around. And again, like we said, and we have been alluding to the entire time, the Big East is kind of bad, and it's, I don't think we need to go into the same torment that we had with ACC fans, particularly because I don't want to anger Seton Hall fans of calling it a potential one bid league. But we'll see how things are going to play, or Villanova fans for that matter, because they got a big win against Wisconsin. They're 31st in Ken Palm. They've got 2 losses.
It just feels like 4 teams at most are in the mix. I mean, that's really the problem, right? At most. I mean, that's St. John's would be the 3rd. Seton Hall, I would say, is 2nd in this conversation. UConn is sort of in their own class, and then Villanova would be the 4th. And then maybe you could talk yourself into another team there at 5, but it's really just those 4 teams right now, which is, with Creighton and Marquette taking a step back, that's really not good for the league.
Yeah. Credit to Bleacher Report's Kerry Miller for this stat. Big East teams that aren't UConn or Seton Hall are 2-23 against Quad 1 opponents this year. Those are, with all due respect, those are ACC numbers from like the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Where we'd go into the ACC season and be like, guys, you got to beat decent non-conference teams. And when you're, sometimes it's matchups and sometimes the numbers get inflated in the wrong direction a little bit because you just get a little bit unlucky. And like, if you're the ACC last season, you're bad, but the SEC is also so good that like all of your teams lost every single game, with the exception of 2 or whatever it was that they played in the conference challenge with the SEC. But this is the kind of stuff that puts a ceiling on the number of bids you get in the NCAA tournament. And that's been a conversation for the Big East too. They got 3 teams in, what was it, 3 years ago, that prompted a fair amount of discussion among what is a group of fan bases that seem like they're always talking to each other about, does the front office of the league need to step up? And, does the TV deal need to get better?
Rick Pitino was talking about merging with the ACC. Yeah.
Does UConn need to go to the Big 12? All of this stuff, right? And so this is a conversation that's probably going to happen again, unless something drastic happens with teams like Georgetown, Xavier, your teams coming into the year. I mean, Xavier, whatever. Providence is another one. Butler is kind of in there. But you look at how the league has been the past few years and like the last, especially 10, 15 years. And you look at Marquette, where Marquette's at, where Xavier's at, where Georgetown's at, although they've been bad for a while now. The years are starting to stack up for Georgetown. But yeah, there's a whole middle of the league here that's kind of missing. And thankfully the likes of Seton Hall have stepped up, and Villanova's better, I think, than expected. But it's Creighton's a little down. It's just it's looking rough up and down the league. And again, for St. John's, that's going to depress their seed. For Georgetown, it basically makes it, if not impossible, very difficult for them to get in the tournament. Like, they have to go on a run, and it has to include at least a win against UConn at some point, whether home or away, to be in tournament contention by the season's over. And Ed Cooley's done that before at Providence a few times. They've had bad non-conferences. They've totally turned it around in the league. It could happen again. But he kind of needs something like that for there to be like a positive feeling about the direction of the Georgetown program after, you hit a baby in the face with an empty water bottle.
Still crazy every time you say it. It just breaks my brain.
I mean, I burst out laughing when you said it earlier, even though we'd said the phrase like 10 times, because I can't get over it.
It does help. At least St. John's is 20th in Ken Palm somehow, So St. John's is still ahead of Virginia, still ahead of North Carolina when it comes to Ken Palm. And so the computers still like St. John's. So that'll help at some level with the metrics. But again, there's only 2 teams there, UConn and St. John's, that are for the taking for some of those teams. So you got to get one of those 2 teams to really have a conversation point.
They're still 28th in net too, St. John's. Like, that's the number that's going to matter more, obviously.
That's true.
It's still early for the net too. But yeah, I mean, look, the numbers are good to have. It's kind of like the Indiana situation. They keep blowing out bad teams. I think they did it again tonight, but they don't have any marquee wins. And so you can stay in the conversation that way. But ultimately, the committee, they like your numbers, and they'll look at your resume numbers. They'll look at your predictive numbers. But if you've just beaten nobody in the first quad or 2, they're not going to put you in the tournament.
The first 4 is your ceiling at that point. Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of these teams find themselves, and a lot of the teams we talked about last last week that have sort of squandered the non-conference, and all of a sudden you look at it, and for a lot of these teams now this week going into the holiday period here where things kind of quiet down for 6, 7, 8, 10 days, there's just not going to be a lot of opportunities until conference play begins in earnest in the new year. Okay, next topic. Things that are good in college basketball, things that are thriving. Christian Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Anderson is awesome at basketball. And I think coming into the season, most people thought he would be good. And this is going to be a guy Texas Tech relies on a lot. They're going to put the ball in his hands a lot. He had a really promising freshman year last year. If you look at his stats, on KenPom and look at his player line, he kind of fits. If you can kind of see into the matrix of KenPom and you've done it for enough years that you kind of have seen players like this before, as a freshman on relatively low usage, but with his efficiency and his shooting and kind of ball handling and playmaking, you can see a breakout, in bright flashing lights. This guy is going to be a good sophomore. But I don't think anybody expected him to be this good. And the performance he had in the second half of the Duke game the other night was as good a single individual performance as I've seen this year, and immediately made me be NBA player. Go to the draft, should be a first round pick. I don't know about lottery pick because it's a really good draft this year. I'm not a draft projection guy. I'm sure one of the draft nerds can tell me why his hip swivel isn't good enough or whatever, but he is a pro at his size, with his handling, his ability to make shots off the dribble at the top, play make for other guys, read pick and rolls and play off of it. Against a Duke team that is a very good defensive team that switched really good defenders onto him. He made several key, I think at least 2 or 3 key shots in the second half where they ran a pick and roll play. Essentially it got killed, turned into a switch with Malik Brown, and he just stepped back and hit a 3 over it. And that's one of the best defenders in college basketball.
Over Gungba too. Yeah.
So good. So good. And a win for Texas Tech that, and we can talk about the Duke of it all in a minute, but a win for Texas Tech that I think you look at a program with a really good coach that maximizes every little margin that they can, that runs good stuff and has talented players in the program. But when those players get in foul trouble, as JT Toppin did, or Lawan Watts, there's just guys he can pull from that know the system, that can come in and give you good minutes. And you can come out of a game that you probably should have lost, by a lot, with the win of your season.
Really it was given David versus Goliath at one point when you looked at the lineups, because Lawan Watts had fouled out in this game early. He was incredible before he fouled out. 20
He's
points.
Awesome too, by the way.
Yeah,
what a player he is.
Yeah, great player. With David Riley last year at Wazoo, was a really nice piece for them. Kind of played like a point forward type role for them, and has been able to ingratiate himself with this Texas Tech team. He's been a great piece. They have a great big 3 here with JT Toppin, Christian Anderson, and Lawan Watts. I love those 3 guys. But the problem with Texas Tech, as we've seen so far, is the depth isn't quite there. But in this game, they were throwing out some insane, strange lineups that somehow were working, and it honestly had to do a lot with the majestic play of Christian Anderson. As you pointed out, I mean, he was just making miraculous, marvelous plays over and over again. And then JT Toppin was also doing some of his own forms of magic as well in this game. But the size and the length of Duke was overwhelming. But somehow Texas Tech found a way to out-rebound Duke. I thought that was the real story in this game. The fact that despite Duke's size and length in this game, that they were able to get out rebounded by Texas Tech. And I think that's probably something that, if I had to guess what John Shire's talking about with his team, it's how do we let these guys out rebound us? So that was fascinating. They shot 55% from the field. Anytime you do that, that's obviously a very, very encouraging sign as a unit. But it was one of those games where it was a little bit wonky at the end, a weird clock situation where, John Shire got them to review the shot to supposedly get more time. When they reviewed it, he ended up losing 0.3 of a second. And that 0.3 of a second actually ended up being important because Boozer didn't get the shot off at the end of the game. So even if he made that 3, it wouldn't have gotten off in time. And that would have been even more of a talking point, because it would have been this whole shot or this whole clock situation led to him not getting the shot shot off in time, and if he got the shot off in time, they would have won the game. So I was actually happy that Boozer missed the shot, not just because I'm a Carolina grad, but just because I didn't want to deal with that whole clock conspiracy situation at the end of this game. But yeah, I mean, Texas Tech was great. Christian Anderson did miss the second of his free throws there at the end, which wasn't as encouraging of a sign, despite how great he played in this game. But it just showed the kind of toughness of this Texas Tech team. And we've been waiting for Texas Tech to have a game this year where it kind of was a proof of concept. And this ended up being one of the best wins of the season. Now, I would say Iowa State at Mackey was probably the best win of the season in my book. But again, this is definitely in the top 3, top 5, whatever you want to do if you want to do your list for best wins of the season. So it was encouraging. I think it's something that's going to be good for Duke at the end of the day. But I feel like I learned a lot about the toughness of this Texas Tech team. And Grant McCasland, one of the best coaches in college basketball, one of the best coaches in the country. And it's nice to see him have this platform and deliver the goods. So I feel like the more casual fans now know his name and kind of know this team, especially know Christian Anderson a lot more after this game.
Yeah. Again, like total underdog situation, not just because of the foul trouble and the way the game flow worked, but also because they're playing in Madison Square Garden. And that is a fun trick that Duke pulls every year, where they play, not every year, maybe, I think almost every year they play at least one game there, but that is
Cameron
their
North,
sort of,
or Store South. We don't know.
It is, but their fan, that registers as a neutral site game, obviously. And even in like a Ken Pom, he has like like if you're North Carolina and you play in Charlotte, he will mark it as semi-home. You play Gonzaga in Charlotte as UNC, that's a semi-home game. So it gets factored in to his assessment anyway. It's a little different with the NCAA and the net rating, all that good stuff. But, that's a theoretically neutral site game for Duke and Texas Tech in terms of distance and whatever. But everybody knows the score. That might as well be a home game for Duke. Mm-hmm. You probably have 85% Duke fans in there. And 15% Texas Tech fans who travel well and have a big and enthusiastic college basketball fan base. No doubts about that. And there were plenty of them in the building. But that's designed for it to be a home game that's not a true home game for Duke. And the crowd sounded that way, and Texas Tech did what they did anyway. And Nolan Groves, who is a freshman at Texas Tech, who has not played basically at all. I mean, he's played some spot minutes here and there, but for the last since really November 26th, he got 3 minutes against New Orleans, then 0 against Wyoming, 0 against LSU, did not play against Arkansas, 0 against Northern Colorado, comes in with 13 minutes when Toppin's in foul trouble, guards Cameron Boozer, a potential number 1 overall pick, airballs a shot, goes 0 of 2, but as McCasland noted in the postgame, finishes with a plus 13 and was a genuine solid guy. And McCasland talked about it afterwards of like, he's played on scout team defense with us. He's got some size. He can move around and move his feet. He can stay in front of guys and stand you up. And that's what you need to do against Cameron Boozer. Essentially, if you're a big guy against Cameron Boozer, you're going to get pulled away from the rim and things are going to get uncomfortable. If you're a smaller guy against Cameron Boozer, you are going to get bludgeoned to death 5 feet away from the rim. But if you're kind of in the middle, you can kind of make him move a little bit and just kind of try to stay in front and make things a little uncomfortable if he tries to shoot threes. And he, Boozer is so efficient with his movements and what he decides to do, and his decision-making is so good. But you stay in front and make things kind of challenging, and you can get some outcomes on some trips down the floor. And that's what Nolan Groves did, which was, again, like program win type stuff, all those cliches, exactly what Texas Tech did. And then it was obviously peppered with just utter brilliance on the ball on the top from Anderson.
Yeah, Horner was a nice piece for them as well, coming off the bench. Also had a great celebration at the end of the game. Found the camera, which is also, it's nice to have that in your back pocket if you're one of the bench guys to be able to celebrate properly. The big thing for me, takeaway from Duke-wise, is Boozer late in these games at the free throw line. That feels like it's going to be something that comes back to bite this team if he doesn't improve there. Because in this game specifically, he has 2 big free throws that he misses late in this game. Now, Caden Boozer hit a huge 3 late in this game. Obviously, the fact that Cameron Boozer is able to catch the ball at the elbow and is basically guaranteed to get a foul call when he's going downhill is something nice to have in your back pocket, too, that you're going to get to the free throw line. That was another big thing for Duke to know that you have that. But again, even if he can't finish the deal, and get to the line and actually make the free throws, then that's going to be a problem for Duke. And it's also going to be something that a lot of these teams are going to scout. And as we get into March and we get into the tournament, people are going to have that in their back pocket and say, hey, let's see if we make him, earn it at the free throw line if he's actually going to make these free throws. So that was the big takeaway for me, just like trying to forecast the future of this Duke team. What is the ceiling of this team? We obviously know they're a top 5 team. I think they're ranked number 6 now, but they're still one of the best teams in the country. We all understand that. We all know Cameron Boozer is elite, the elite of the elite at this point. But that is something that's like a little bit of kryptonite, right? When it comes to Superman, it's like we know that if we put him on the foul line, it's not a guarantee, and we need to put him to the test and see if he gets better. And I'm sure that's going to be something that they talk about and work on as we kind of move through the rest of the season, because that was fascinating down the stretch to see him not necessarily be able to knock down those free throws late.
Yeah, and what McCaslin's talking about in terms of standing him up is like kind of your best hope, because if he gets an angle on you, you're done. Mm-hmm. Like it's just over, whether that's 10 feet from the rim or 5 feet or 2 feet, it's done. But if you can stand him up and keep him from getting there and be in the spot first, then he has to turn around, restart things and pull things back out. And the one minor flaw in his game, which for being a 6'9" freshman who does literally everything else on the basketball court extremely, extremely well, he's just a decent 3-point shooter. He's 16 of 48 on the year, and he is not a guy who's going to take a ton of attempts this year. I don't think Duke needs him to, but he's happy to shoot if he's left totally open and catches it in rhythm. And that's a threat for sure. But I think coaches are probably going to start to learn to live with that a little bit. And you're right on that sort of extends to the free throw, just shooting in general. He's a 67% free throw shooter. If he was 76%.
He would be the number one.
If he was 76% from 3, then we'd really be in trouble here.
We never hear the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's essentially a 77% free throw shooter, which is really good, but he has missed some key ones down the stretch. And that's
the thing. It's not that he's a bad free throw shooter. It's just that we've seen in these moments that it's not necessarily – he doesn't look like he's excited to be there. I'll just say that. Reading the body language.
Right. And that could be a thing down the stretch. And it could also just be a thing of like a team – and it's hard to do with the other guys Duke has on the roster. Ngangba, again, shout out to Brian Ralph at Basket Under Review, who I think mentioned him in a podcast we did. Pardon me, it was Brian Geisinger, actually, who does a lot of work on the ACC. He was on the ACC preview, and he brought up Ngangba as like his most interesting player in the conference this year, because for a guy that big who sort of can kind of look a little lumbering in terms of how he gets up and down the floor, his skill on the ball and his passing is pretty incredible to put next to a guy next to Cam Boozer, like Cam Boozer. And obviously Ngangba does other stuff defensively and offensive rebounding, does like the big man nitty gritty stuff that you need to win college basketball games. But he's also really skilled with the ball in his hands and makes really good decisions. And the rest of Duke's team there's a lot of skill and a lot of spacing and shooting. And look, they're really good. It's one loss to a good team with a guy who went absolutely nuts on them. Although I think that Christian Anderson performance is probably replicable throughout the conference season as well. But Duke, like the one other thing that Texas Tech did really well that I want to mention really quickly is kind of blew up a lot of their ball screen stuff. And guards just got through it. They got around screens. They jumped over the shoulder. There was no there were plenty of times when Duke got good stuff out of it, but there were plenty of times in key possessions where the usual Duke thing that you see of like someone sets a screen, the player gets around the screen, suddenly it's 4-on-3 and the defense is done. And it's just kind of that easy. Was not really in play for a lot of the second half. And that was really impressive. And again, a little bit of a template maybe for some teams coming up against Duke in the ACC in the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I love the 2-man game with the Boozers at the end of the game. I think that was a telltale sign of things to come. Like Caden bringing the ball up the court, initiating through Cameron at the elbow, Cameron getting to decide if he's going to either take that shot at the elbow, if he can get it, or drive on his own, or drive and kick. And the big three that Caden Boozer hit late was a drive and kick. All the pressure comes down as he's getting downhill. He kicks it out to Caden Boozer. Caden Boozer hits an easy three. I think we're going to see a lot more initiation through Caden Boozer, and I think those two are going to play off each other a lot more. And it's going to be sort of similar, funny enough, to like what Knipple and Flagg were doing last year, playing off each other. So that's another thing that I think they learned late in that game that works. So Duke is going to be fine. That's really the takeaway, and it was just an incredible performance from Christian Anderson and the rest of Texas Tech.
Yeah, still think Duke's a 1 seed. Still think Duke is
for sure
very, very good at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else very, very good at basketball that I wanted to bring up because we haven't talked about him at all. We've talked about Arizona here and there. We did the live show right after the Arizona-Florida game to tip the season off, which was a lot of fun. And I still think back on how excited I was to talk about actual real basketball that night. That wasn't an exhibition game. I was fired up, man. I was real fired up. But Tobe Awaka is the best rebounder in the country, and it's not particularly close. And I have to issue a correction. I think last week we were talking about Villanova's Duke Brennan. My guy, for obvious reasons. Really cool name. And I think I said he was like one of, if not the most productive rebounders on both ends in college basketball. That's true. One of. Awaka is that guy. Mm-hmm. He's number one on offensive rebounding rate right now. He's number one in defensive rebounding rate right now. In Arizona's blowout win over San Diego State this past weekend, he had 15 rebounds in 22 minutes, which is ludicrous, particularly against a team like San Diego State. But he's done that before. He had 15 in 23 minutes against Alabama, which is another good rebounding. Well, actually, Alabama's kind of a bad rebounding team. Good rebounding program. Typically, they've struggled on the boards a little bit this year.
They kind of fudge the numbers because they have so many rebounding opportunities, because they have so many possessions, that's why they're always in the top, but it's because of the possessions, right?
Rate wise, they're usually pretty good too, but not this year. This year they've struggled. But anyway, Awaka had 16 and 20 against Denver, and then against Utah Tech early in the year, he had 18 rebounds in 19 minutes. Okay, and so now having looked at these numbers in preparation for the podcast, I have now realized that I will spend every Arizona game for the rest of the season tracking the rebounds per minute from Tobe Awaka in pursuit of the, Moby Dick of this season statistically for me, which is going to be, can this dude get 1 rebound per minute in any college basketball game this year? I think he's got it in him. I'm not sure who it's going to happen against. Obviously, the competition is going to go up a little bit, in the next few months here. But there's got to be a point somewhere where he plays like 15 minutes and grabs 15 rebounds. It's going to happen. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. From the Tennessee Rick Barnes School of Rebounding, he has been able to master his ways there at Arizona. And it is nice for Koa Pete to have Krivas and to have Tobe Awaka sort of do the dirty work for him. I'm sure there's a little bit of him that's like, I would like to get some of these stats, some of these rebounds. But when you have someone who's a madman like Awaka going after the ball with that type of pursuit, that type of effort, it's hard not to recognize. And I think it's a great point, because I do feel like every time everybody talks about the number one team in the country, we kind of go Koa Pete, Jaden Bradley, Del Orso, energy, X Factor, glue guy. You know what I mean? It's like Awaka is definitely a major piece of this whole puzzle. And, he's fascinating to watch. And I'm with you. I want to watch the Moby Dick journey to get the 1 rebound per minute. I think it's worth the journey to go with him. So Colorado, like there's some Big 12 matchup out there he could do it. So sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah, everybody put Arizona games on your calendar and get ready to follow along. So
it's a AwakaWatch. Yeah.
Yeah. So Evan Miyakawa tweeted over the weekend, to put into perspective how good Tobe Awaka is as a rebounder, here are some notable top 10 players in rebounding skill since 2009 at evanmia.com. And I think rebounding skill in Evan's parlance is like a combination of offense and defensive rebounding. Probably there's some competition weights involved and like other things that I don't understand. Evan can, respond to this podcast link on Twitter and tell us if I'm getting that right or not off the top of my head. But number 1, Kenneth Farid, 49.7%. Number 2, Oscar Shibwe, 48.7%. He skips. Number 8, Tobe Awaka, 46.3%. Number 10, Zach Edey, 45.1%. So like we're talking about not just the best rebounder in college basketball this season, but the best rebounder in college basketball, like one of the best rebounders in college basketball of the past decade and change. And it's interesting because I was looking at Arizona's stuff, and like they're usually a pretty good offensive rebounding team, but like pretty good, like top 20 good, like the way a good team tends to rebound on the offensive end.
Yeah, rebounding is part
if
of
they're trying to.
Tommy's.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But not like the Houston or Buzz Williams, Texas A&M. Like this is what we do. Mm-hmm. We rebound everything that we can get our hands on, and then we create new shots out of it, and then we rinse and repeat. Like that's not really Arizona when you think about Arizona basketball, right? It's sort of just like, yes, we would like to get offensive rebounds, and we have talented players, and they can go do that. This year is different. Like they are 6th in offensive rebounding rate this season. They're 26th defensively. And it's just funny to me because you think about all the talent they have at positions and Koa Pete and Del Orso and these, Jaden Bradley, and the way that Tommy Lloyd wants to play, getting up and down the floor, playing with pace, spacing the floor, getting easy buckets in transition, creating a lot of 2-point opportunities off of simple offensive stuff the way Gonzaga does. Like all of the fundamentals of Arizona basketball that have made them good the past 3-4 years now. And you add into that a baseline of like, just you have this absolute rebound eater on both ends of the floor for 20, 23, 25 minutes a game. And Lloyd hasn't had to change anything stylistically about what he's doing. He's just getting all of this bonus, and they can just keep doing what they're doing. They're not like selling out on the offensive rebounds.
He's not taking shots away
all the time.
Yep.
Exactly. Like they're not doing, they're not crashing 4 guys at the boards and acknowledging, hey, sometimes the other team's going to get a layup, but this is just part of how we do things here. It really changes their baseline of productivity because they are a pretty good shooting team, don't take a lot of threes, don't really need to because they get at the rim, they score in the mid-range, and they get a ton of second chances when this guy's on the floor. And it's a really impressive like upgrade to their normal like way of doing things that has not required any, at least from what I can detect, and maybe people can correct me on this, like significant tactical change from Tommy Lloyd. They're just kind of doing what they do. They just have a guy who grabs everything he can get his hands on.
Yeah, it's great. I'm also fascinated right now by Michigan's chase of Arizona to be the number 1 team. It's like Duke loses, some of those votes go to Michigan. Now Michigan is climbing closer. It's like those 2 teams right now. I wonder if Michigan can jump Arizona without even Arizona losing a game, because it does feel like it's getting closer and closer. And maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen to Arizona. I think they deserve to be number 1, but Michigan's just been on a tear. So it's like, it's fashion over function. Like I was saying before, it's like the fashion and the way that Michigan is destroying teams. Everyone's like, well, they have to be the number 1 team, right? And then Arizona, you looked at the ranked wins and how they're playing, and you mentioned all these different characters, whether it's Burries or, Awaka, all these different guys who have become stars in their own right, in their own roles. They're a fascinating team. Tommy Lloyd, broke Bill Guthridge's record for most wins in his first 2 seasons as a head coach. So it's like, he's sort of been on this trajectory anyway, but I think that race right now between Michigan and Arizona is also fascinating just for the sport to see who's actually number 1. Not that it really matters, but, for the fodder, it's fun. And it makes you want to watch Arizona even more because this team is so good.
I got to be honest with you. And this is, I'm just going to come out. I'm going to come clean on the podcast right now. This is radical transparency. I didn't even realize Arizona was number 1. Today I saw like someone from like, I saw like on my For You thing on Twitter, which is just always a disaster for some reason. But I was on there real quick and someone posted like, and Michigan remains number 2 in this week's AP poll or whatever. I was like, wait, they're number 2? Like, I just don't check in with the AP poll at this point in my life.
It's probably the best way to be. I more do it to placate the casuals. Yeah.
So many other rankings that I look at now, right. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I guess I have my own in my head, and I feel like the AP poll,
everyone's got power rankings. Yeah, it's a lot of rankings.
It's a lot, and the AP poll ends up coming down to like, did you lose more recently or not?
Yeah,
like, not are you the better team that we think is actually the better team? It's like, and you've got two undefeated teams, both of whom are great. Like, honestly, Arizona's awesome. Iowa State is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, to me, is the only team I've seen this year that is like, whoa, this team is, like the national title favorite and frankly terrifying. But Arizona's not far behind, and it's fair enough. It's just, it was funny to me today where I was like, oh yeah, like an alternate world exists where Michigan is not the number one team in college basketball, even though they continue to put up 100 points on literally everyone they play, like every time out. So yeah, anyway. That's my radical transparency moment.
I appreciate the transparency. I try to play the game, I try to make the AP voters feel like they have a say still, because there's so many other rankings. But I do like, just for the history, like I like the annals of history, just to be like, this team was number one. I think this is the third week Arizona will be number one. So it's like, when I look back in 5 years and I'm like, oh, that's right, Arizona was number one for 5 weeks in 2025. That's just for me. But you're right. We're so past that point. For us that talk about it, but it is fascinating just to kind of see how the voters sway and swing from week to week at the top when there are no losses. It's like, It really is just kind of like, oh yeah, I see Michigan dominate. I guess I am more of a Michigan guy, or maybe they're looking at the rankings like Kim Pom, Torvik, whatever else. So you never know.
I certainly think they're more influenced by that now, but there's also certain psychology to it where it's like, well, you didn't lose, so I can't rank you lower.
That's true.
It's just, I can't do it.
It's built in. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Maybe I just spent too many years in the trenches where I had to write like immediate reactions to the latest AP poll, and just was sitting there being like, I don't care.
AP really poll reactions. Monday morning.
Top 25 reactions. It's like, oh my God, who cares? Who is this sponsored by again? Anyway, this one piece of content is sponsored by Wendy's or whatever, so we got to do it.
Wendy's loves the AP poll. That's for sure. Yeah.
They used to love the Wooden Watch. They had to write about the Wooden Watch.
They love the Heisman. They have the Wendy's high school Heisman too. Yeah, they love it. Go Wendy's.
Oh my God, that meme of like the soldier having trauma is I wish I could flash it up on the screen right now. Anyway, moving on. Anyway, Tobe Awaka, awesome at basketball, great rebounder, and please join Tate and I in our quest to watch this guy literally get 1 rebound per minute. It's going to happen at some point. And I'd be interested to see, like, past a certain sample size of minutes, like 15 minutes or up, has this ever happened before? Maybe Kenneth Faried did it at some point where he had a game where he came in.
Feels like something the Manimal would do. Yeah.
Where like, I played 15 minutes against, some random low major and grabbed 15 boards and then pieced out for the rest of the game or something. Who knows? But I'll be on that. Speaking of watches that we should get sponsored, there's one. Wendy's, hit us up. If you want to do AwakaWatch, we'll be there. Okay. Purdue beat the absolute tar out of Auburn, and that I feel like had something to do with what Bruce Pearl said about them before the game. Do you want to discuss this? I don't think this was particularly smart indirect management from Bruce Pearl.
Yeah, he also said, I can't remember what brought, I don't know if it was the Carolina-Ohio State game, but he basically took credit for getting his son the job. He was like, now they're writing him the check instead of me. Was kind of like, the implicit there was that like he made sure that they like one of the Pearls were getting the check. I was like, Bruce,
the money stays in the family.
Yeah, I was like, Brucey, come on, what are we doing here? So I think he loves being the media personality. But I think he's also like the filter is a little like he needs to turn the filter up. Like in Interstellar when there's Taurus and he's like, turn the humor down 10%. Like I think Bruce needs to have that happen, especially when he's talking about future opponents for his son. So not the best idea, even in my opinion.
So yeah, so if my son's team, the team that I coached the previous season, was going to play in against Purdue. I don't think they played in West Lafayette, or did they? I don't know. Let me double check that real quick.
I think they played. I think it was neutral, right?
Yeah. It was. Okay. The quote, anyway, the important thing. We bitch slapped Purdue last year in Birmingham, Pearl said Wednesday via Outkick.
Yeah.
Which it seems like, anyway.
Fitting.
Matt couldn't have been more gracious. He said, BP, we needed that. My guys need to see in December what a Final Four team looks like, and now we know what we got to do. He was such a professional. There's a lot of Purdue kids that came back that went home for Christmas last year pissed off because Auburn beat them. Purdue players did not like this, and they made it very clear via Instagram and other methods, subtweeting and so on and so forth. They did not like this, and then they proceeded to absolutely destroy Auburn, basically from start to finish. 88-60 was the final score. I guarantee. And there was a moment in the second half where Painter, I think, typically would have extended some more minutes to some of his his walk-ons or whatever, and he did not. And there was just like a tone throughout the entire game of, wait, what? That's how you read that? Okay, fine. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah, it was. I respect Matt Painter for taking it that way, and again, it's one of those things where it's like you don't want your dad writing cash checks that you can't cash, and I felt like that was exactly what that was. And he was talking to Dan Dockage also, which like Dockage kind of leads you into some of those comments. So I mean, I watched that clip to see if that was sort of the case. It was not. I mean, this was totally Bruce Pearl. He said this himself, and then he like caught himself. He was like, I know I probably shouldn't have said they got bitch slapped by us. Like he tried to like do a little hardy har afterwards, and it was just like, Bruce, again, turn it down 10%. Like this is not what you need leading into the game. And I'm sure if we talk to Steven, he's like, I did not need my dad to go give them bulletin board material, especially a team that is as good as Purdue is. And they made him feel it. And Auburn's just weird this year. I never know which version of Auburn is going to show up, and maybe that's our coaching is a little bit behind that sort of inconsistency as a group. I'm sure Auburn fans might be thinking that right now, but yeah, I just don't understand how to read this team at this moment. But Purdue was going to come ready to play because that's who Matt Painter is, and boy, did they send a message. It was fun to watch.
It was very fun. It was a classic FU game, and delivered in the kind of low key
Matt Painter way,
but straightforward Matt Painter style. There were no illusions about it, but he wasn't like braggadocious about it after the fact either. It was just sort of like, yes, we are going to destroy you, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. And
ultimate professional. Yeah,
exactly. It was kind of funny, honestly. All right. So one last topic that I wanted to get into. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask you, where are we at in North Carolina? Real quick. I mean, nice win over Ohio State.
Yeah.
Needed it. Vibes seem to be good. We talked about Duke earlier. Let's check in on UNC here.
Yeah, I think the front court is great. Caleb Wilson, Henry Vasar, you really can't complain with those two guys. And Caleb had a moment that was his freshman moment. I think the first time he's really had a freshman moment with the 4-point foul at the end of that game with about 48 seconds to play. I would have called that the nail in the coffin. Ohio State's going to win that game. But for North Carolina to dig themselves out of that grave, Seth Trimble had a very fortuitous fall that led to a bounce pass or just a ball rolling directly to Henry Vasar for a dunk that ended up winning the game. And then Caleb and Vasar with the double block at the end of that game on a rebound on Royal. Royal had a great game for Ohio State. I'm still confused as to why, North Carolina decided to play small basically to match up with Ohio State. It's like the one size advantage that they had across the board was Jaren Stevenson. They decided to bench Stevenson and start Bogovats and with Seth Trimble, who was back for his first game. Trimble looked really good in this game. Outside of that fall at the end, hit a couple big threes late in that second half. So he's a nice piece, did a good job on Bruce Thornton. So I was confused about not taking advantage of their size in this particular game. For whatever reason, they play close games with Ohio State. So, again, that's sort of what this turned into. They got up 12 points. I went downstairs. I started like, I had the game on upstairs. I'm like, they're up 12. Seems like things are okay. I got to go quickly grab some stuff. And then I came back upstairs and it was a 2-point game. And I'm like, why did I leave?
It was your fault.
Yeah,
exactly. You got to stay in place.
Yeah, it was, Woody Durham said, go where you go, do what you do. I did not do that. So I had to sit back down and lock back in for the end of that game. I think the real takeaway was that they found a way to win that game. It was not pretty. I think that they thought the game was over, and Ohio State had other ideas, and they were able to make it a game down the stretch. So for them to respond, for Caleb not to be frustrated after that bad foul and bounce back and make a big play at the end of the game defensively, I thought that was very encouraging. I think the front court is great. And honestly, when I watch these teams, when I watch Duke and I watch Carolina, because I watched them on the same day there on Saturday, all I can really think about is like Boozer versus Caleb Wilson, and then Gongba versus Vesar. I mean, I just think it's going to be amazing. And I think that those two front courts are so good. And I think that they're going to have a lot of animosity towards each other. And both of them kind of get the credit for being, quote unquote, the best front court in the ACC and all that sort of stuff. And I just can't wait for that game. So if anything, like I was watching that game on Saturday saying to myself, man, I can't wait to see that matchup. But yeah, Carolina's good. I'm not sure the metrics love them or it's fascinating to kind of see what happens with the net. They beat a Q1 team and fall 4 spots in the net. Explain that to me, Eamon. I surely can't explain it.
Hey, don't make me explain. If we're gonna, you can't make me explain every net movement, man.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I will never get it. I'm just gonna sit here and act like, okay, that's normal. But yeah, I think they're a good team. I think again, they still have to figure out with Seth coming back what the rotation looks like with Bogavats, who got benched in the second half, Jonathan Powell, his play, Jaron Stevenson, his play coming off the bench. But again, the front court is really good, and I think that's really where they're going to hang their hat the rest of the year.
Yeah, and then you look at it. I mean, beat Kansas, which has looked better and better ever since.
Yeah, with Peterson.
Beat Kentucky, which has a decent chance to look better. We buried them. Again, we buried them a few weeks ago, and they may not reach the heights that people thought coming into the season or the heights that their roster spend indicates they should, but they will probably look better than this in a month or two's time based on recent trajectory. And beat Ohio State, which I still kind of like as a team, and I like Thornton a ton, obviously, and I think they'll be frisky enough in the Big Ten, and we'll see how it goes. So like 11-1 with some quality wins with the room to grow, and really the only loss against Michigan State, which is a good team. I like whatever the metrics say, and I think the metrics are coming around. Like they're 23rd in Ken Palm now. They're 19th in the net. It's funny that they were 15th before they beat Ohio State. Well, look,
it's just funny. Like you get a Q1 win, and like
where's Ohio State in the net?
Just
let's see. Oh, they're 49th. Okay, yeah. That's much lower than they are. Like Ken Palm and Torvik and stuff. But the net's still weird this time of year. Don't worry about the net. Honestly, everyone just ignore the net until like late January.
I only know that because some guy tweeted it at me. It was like, the net is anti-Carolina. We fell 4 spots after getting a Q1 win. I'm like, all right, thanks for the heads up.
It's not anti-Carolina. It's definitely sometimes weird, or at least it feels weird, particularly this time of year when there's swings that make people lose, pull their hair out. But it's not a conspiracy, guys. It's just kind of a weird metric.
That's my rule. It's not a conspiracy, yeah. I promise. Yeah, it's like the refs. It's like they don't hate you. They hate everybody.
Yeah. Okay, last thing. I just wanted to shout this out really quickly. So we've talked about Vanderbilt being awesome for like multiple weeks. I went out on a limb and picked them to go to the Final Four before the season started. They're still undefeated. They're still playing some of the best offense in the country. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to go check out Eric Fawcett's, like, as opposed to me sort of retreading it late into the podcast here. He did a tweet, I think Sunday, maybe Monday, where he broke down and listed out and then clipped Vanderbilt's pick and roll offense and their actions. And I've had a couple even like readers to my newsletter ask me like, why is Vanderbilt so good? They play well and they're fun to watch, but it doesn't look like they have like overwhelming talent, but they're just bludgeoning teams every night. And I think the players that they have are really good, but I think Mark Byington again is like the secret sauce here. And you know, my understanding of X's and O's is, I would say, like mid-level, right? Like I'm not like crunching film all the time, but I'm also not like totally clueless as to what people are doing. But Eric's very quick video clip that he put together of all of the actions that Vanderbilt runs out of just pick and roll. One play type, essentially what, if you looked in Synergy at the film, would be one play type, just pick and roll. And that's as close to it as it gets broken down. And he's got listed out: double ram exit, ram follow Spain, wedge ghost, empty stagger out, ram follow exit. All of these in a row. And it's a pick and roll at the top of the key. And if you're just watching basketball, you're like, hey, nice play, cool, whatever. But it's so different and so interesting how Vanderbilt's running stuff. And I think, and I'd be interested to talk to a coach about this, or even Mark Byington, if we can get him on at some point, of like, there's very few people, I feel like, at least that I watch college basketball on a nightly basis, that run stuff that looks this good and is this consistently effective. And you saw it against Wake Forest the other night. I mean, just destroyed Wake Forest on the offensive end. Wake had no chance. And, Vanderbilt plays solid enough defense, but it really just comes down to like, they demoralize you in your inability to guard what they do. And you put all these good guards and guys that can play make on the same team. And you're right. You watch them. They don't have a ton of size most often. They're not like overwhelming. You don't watch them and look at a team like Duke and see the same sort of stuff. But man, are they effective and different and complex on the offensive end. So everybody should go look that up. It's really fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love Vanderbilt getting some love, and the Memphis game was a real test. We kind of circled that during our last conversation. Is like they had a tough week coming up where they were the team that these teams that needed a quality win kind of had on the schedule. Memphis, they were able to survive that game in overtime, and it felt like they just kind of wore on Memphis late in that game. Again, those offensive sets, like you mentioned, finally Memphis wasn't able to blow them up like they were physically in the first 40 minutes of that game. Once it got to overtime, they just sort of started to lose communication a little bit, and then Wake Forest, they just got completely demolished. And to see where Wake was earlier in the season, to see where they are now, it feels like things have just completely gotten off the rails at this point. It just snowballed quickly. But yeah, they're just such a fun team to watch. And it feels like Byington right now is sort of leader in the clubhouse for Coach of the Year potentially. So, when we talk about the SEC, Vanderbilt's in the mix for, the best team in the SEC, which is kind of crazy when you think about coming into the season who we were talking about, whether it was, Arkansas, Kentucky, Alabama. Who would have thought Vanderbilt would have been the team that's on the tip of our tongues?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I thought Vanderbilt was going to be good. When I picked them to go to the Final Four, it was more of like, here's a team I think is like a top 25 team that I can pick that's a little different, that you take a shot and you look smart, like if you get lucky in 4 months or whatever. But it's a little fun, and it's not the same thing that everybody's doing. Right? You know what I mean? It's just like, throw it on there. Who cares? It's Final Four pick in November. Like, no one's like, there's no stakes here. But even by that, like, I thought Vanderbilt would be a top 25-ish team or whatever. They've been incredibly impressive. They're up to 8th in KenPom, again, still undefeated. Their average margin of victory, I don't have to hand, but they beat Western Kentucky in a close one by 5 points. Pretty much every other time they've taken the floor, they've won by double digits. Yeah, every other time they've taken the floor, they've won by double digits, except Memphis in OT. And often by like 20 points. Duke Miles is playing incredible. Tyler Tanner is playing great. Tyler Nickel might be the best player on the team. And both of those two guys that I just mentioned are running the show out top. Like, really impressive team, really fun to watch. And if you're not on the Vanderbilt bandwagon / the Vanderbilt bet on them wagon, then now is the time, because opportunities are probably running out. People have probably, at least Vegas has probably figured out this team is just going to put up, 90, 95 points pretty much every time they take the floor.
Yeah, Vegas is course corrected for sure. Jalen Washington been a nice piece for them as well. Yeah, a lot of good, sort of under the radar guys that are turning into stars right before our very eyes. I mean, I love Duke Miles at High Point. I did not expect Duke Miles to, sort of be this version of himself. He was at Oklahoma last year, now at Vanderbilt, so he's been great. And like you said,
he was good at Oklahoma last year too, but he was not anywhere close to this good.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there was some fears, like playing second fiddle type stuff involved there, but man, he's lights out this year.
Yep. They're a fun team. Shout out to Vanderbilt.
They're
we love it.
Fun team. It'll be fun to watch them go up against SEC defenses every night. They've played good teams. It's not, it's not fake or a total schedule trick of the mind or anything, but it is. It's going to be a really fun conference season for Vanderbilt, and we'll see how they go. All right, I think that's what I had.
Yeah,
it is time to close it out. It's time for us at the Basket Under Review podcast, in fact, to close out 2025. We are going to take next week off. I'm going to be on a family trip, and so we'll take a break. We'll be back in January. And really quickly, Tate, I want to thank you for coming on the show so often. Very grateful for you. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, Merry Christmas and all that good stuff, and a Happy New Year. So thank you. And thank you to all of you guys for listening to the show, for giving us a shot in the first few months of the college hoop season and in the off season when we got things up and running. It's been really gratifying to do the show. It's been great to hear feedback from people who have enjoyed listening, and the reviews have been pretty good. If you haven't done that, go leave us a review on iTunes or whatever. That's supposedly helps podcasts. I don't know, but it couldn't hurt, I guess. And go check out Basket Under Review. Check out Home Field, our sponsor. Thank you to everyone at Basket Under Review. Thank you to Trilly Donovan. Thanks to our producer, Corey Aldis, and the graphics guy, Sam Freyer, and everybody else there. That's going to do it for us for 2025. We'll see you in 2026. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.